Hello, Russell. Welcome to Autism Knows No Borders. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
You have such an important and inspiring story to tell. And I'd like to start with your background. When did you first notice something was different about you?
It's a good question. I've always struggled from the day I was born, but I was through my early years up to the age of 7. I didn't know it was abnormal to struggle so much. So when I was around 7, it occurred to me that it was abnormal because my mom came up to me one day and she said she watched a documentary about a Nickelodeon TV show host, the show I watched, and she was saying how he has OCD, and I didn't know what OCD was, and so she explained to me, and I told her, well, I do all that stuff, and so my mom really didn't even know that I had OCD until then, and she was quite concerned because I told her in depth, like all the thoughts that would go through my head, and then I was diagnosed with OCD about a year later. So, yeah, I again, I was so young, I was naive to know what normal, whatever that is today, what it was back then too. So I really didn't know I was different until around the age of 7.
Could you describe more in detail what that felt like, the OCD?
Yeah, so OCD has been my number one nemesis. OCD, anxiety, and depression, they're the three-headed monster for me because they all feed off each other. So when one starts, ramping up, the other two kick in as well. So OCD back when I was very young, it entailed, hand washing hundreds of times a day. My hands would be so dry at the end of the day, they'd just crack open and bleed. Uh, I would look at everything that I set my eyes on in multiples of 4. So if I looked at anything, I would have to look at it 4 times evenly, all the way, sometimes up to 256 times. And I couldn't look at anything else until I finished that. So basically, everything I looked at, it was taking up my whole day. A lot of intrusive thoughts. If I didn't do a ritual that my OCD told me to do, I'd be punished by my mind saying, well, if you don't do this, then your mom is going to die of cancer. Or if you don't do this, your family will get murdered by a burglar at night. And, I was very young. I didn't want to be thinking these thoughts, and I don't know why they're in my head. So for a large majority of the time, even when my mom knew I had OCD, I was too ashamed to tell her about the intrusive thoughts aspect of it. So a lot of rituals that I never wanted to do, but I had to do to keep my mind at ease. OCD is basically a coping mechanism to keep your intrusive thoughts at bay. So it was very difficult, and it manifests in different areas. It's like whack-a-mole. When I think I have it under control, it pops up in a different area of my life. So to this day, it sneaks up on me, and I only realize that it's really inhibiting my well-being until I really get hit hard from it.
Mm-hmm. So when you were diagnosed at 8, did you receive any services?
So diagnosed with the OCD at 8, wasn't diagnosed with autism until 12. I've never received any services. That's one thing that honestly um, it irritates me, not irritates, but maybe aggravates me when a lot of people think I've come incredibly far in my life, and people often assume it's because of services. Whether it's messages on Instagram saying what services did you receive, or when I gave a speech in LA in February, he was like, "Did you have?" There was a question from the audience: "Did you have a mentor, or who taught you this?" It's just all on my own. I've never received any services. I did try occupational therapy, but the therapist was just didn't know how to interact with me. For some reason, the outside world has never known how to interact with me, especially when I was a kid. They would just hurt me. I was that kid in the corner of the room with his hood up, not making eye contact, who was crying softly, rocking back and forth, and I wouldn't talk to anybody other than my mom. So a lot of people would push me uh, and be mean to me just because I wouldn't. I was listening to them, but I wouldn't make eye contact or talk to them because I was too scared. So I was offered occupational therapy, but that was about it. But never received any supports or services aside from the support of my mom and my belief in myself to push through my struggles and to live the life I wanted to live. So no, never received anything, and to this day, I have very little resources. Uh, I've always kind of just been on my own, and that is a testament to my own strength and perseverance. But at the same time, it feels bad. I feel like I'm still kind of at a large majority of my life, and still today, I've been forgotten by society.
Mm-hmm. Um, let's go back to your childhood and we'll progress
Mhm.
into how you manage these struggles today. So, what was the environment like at home? Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one older sister. It was a very uh, especially when I started struggling a lot around the age of 7, 8, 9. Um, I really stopped going to school, and I dropped out of public school in the 5th grade. And the more I struggled, the more our family dynamics. I had a mom, dad, and an older sister. Our family dynamics were just completely out of whack. I'm very similar to my mother. My sister is very similar to my father. My father really didn't know how to interact with me. He tried his best, um, but I'm best friends with my mom. She just knew how to interact with me. She didn't have to learn anything, and so my sister and my dad were always kind of on one end sided, I guess, on one team, and my mom and me on the other when we would butt heads because still nobody in our family was ever familiar with autism. So when I did have my meltdowns, even after my diagnosis, it was still hard for them to wrap their head around. Like, hey, Russell, he was just fine 2 minutes ago, but now we turn the TV on and he's like bawling on the floor. What's going on? And so my sister would get pissed off because, I would interrupt her, what she wanted to do with the family. And a lot of attention was put on me because I was struggling so much. So she felt neglected. And then she thought I was faking my symptoms. So, very rough childhood in terms of uh, that dynamic. My family's always been supportive. To this day, our love for each other is unconditional, but due to the misunderstanding and the lack of awareness back then, uh, man, there were some fights where, I'm surprised there were times when, I can't get into it because it was just too bad, but it was hard to say the very least.
Mm-hmm. How has your relationship with your sister changed over the years?
It's changed a lot. It's grown tremendously. We've bonded a lot. She moved away about 5 years ago, and uh, having that separation between us. She's down in San Diego now. I'm in Reno, Nevada. Having that separation between us has really helped. It's making us both take a step back and look at our relationship and realize that friends come and go. Your parents tend to leave this earth before you, and your siblings are really going to be the only ones who are there throughout your whole entire life. And so the more I've grown as an individual, the more she has grown and learned about me. I think she's learned a hell of a lot about me just through my public speaking and what she sees on Instagram. Because, growing up, I never really talked to her about my struggles because I felt she didn't understand. But her getting that kind of awareness through a filter such as Instagram or a video I might post, I think it has helped her tremendously understand my mind. And so we have a lot of good conversations. We try to talk at least once a week on the phone. And we're definitely closer than we've ever been.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
How about with your father?
Just actually, I was estranged with my father for about 3 years. My mother and him divorced 2 years ago after 34 years of marriage. But I recently, started seeing my father again, and that's um, been good. He was out of my life for a few years, uh, due to his own struggles. But reconnecting again, it feels good. It kind of makes me frustrated at some points, like, where did my dad go? Like, he's here again, but where was he, when I kind of needed him? At the same time, it brings up a lot of childhood memories too. I've been having a lot of flashbacks about my childhood, and it's painful. But I want to explore my childhood. I don't want to be the type of person who, shuts part of themselves off to avoid pain. I always believe pain has taught me everything in life. Pain has given me all my insights that I have. So I really want to explore more of my childhood. But definitely reconnecting with my father has been a process, very bittersweet. But in the end, if we have anything at all when we leave this earth, it's what means the most is the connections we make with people. So I always try to make connections and not hold any grudges.
Mm-hmm. That's very mature.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm a very complicated person, just due to, one, my mind, and secondly, the conditions I grew up in. I was a societal recluse from age of about 11 to 24. So for the last 5 years, I'm very socially immature. I don't want to say immature, but inexperienced. But I'm very wise, and I'm very much an old soul because of that solitude I had for 13 years while other kids my age were out hanging out. I was at my home just thinking, writing, learning. I learned that, so much has been taken away from me in my life. I learned that knowledge is one thing that can be given to you and never taken away. So I always try to reflect on certain experiences and grow from them. And right now, I never fit in with my age group. My best friend is 45. A very close friend is 42. I've just never fit in with my age group. I guess because of my maturity, and that's again bittersweet. Sometimes I wish, like, I love who I am, but at the same time, I really don't have any social interactions a lot of the time unless I'm giving a speech. So everything in life is bittersweet. You just have to move forward with what you want your purpose to be. And I'm fulfilling my purpose right now. So the byproduct of that, if it's bittersweet or if it hurts in some aspect, that's okay, because in the end, I'm fulfilling my purpose.
Mm-hmm. So could you talk about what made you become a social recluse? You said you were around 11 years old?
Yeah, I just the struggle, and then the trying to push through those struggles, and being basically slapped in the face by my teachers or doctors or therapists.
How did they treat you? Yeah.
A lot of it, I mean, I would have to really delve deep and reflect to actually give you specific answers. But a lot of it was just ignoring me. They would ignore me, or they would, when I would try to go to school and I would have a meltdown, or I wouldn't talk to anybody, they would think I was lazy, that I didn't want to be part of the school environment. When in actuality, that's all I ever wanted. I just needed a little help to get there. And I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I was bullied by doctors. I've been inpatient in 3 different psych wards, and each time I leave worse off than when I entered. And the first time I went was for 5 weeks at age 12. And those 5 weeks, man, I went there because I was suffering. I didn't want to live anymore at age 12. If I knew what suicide was back then, I probably would have contemplated it, but I didn't really know what it was back then. So I went through utter hell for 5 weeks in a psychiatric ward, and I went there for help, and I was just berated and, separated from my mom when she would come to visit, just because I was crying and tears of happiness to see her. They thought she was enabling me. And it was just things like that. I was struggling so much, and it seemed like the harder I tried to be part of this world, the more I struggled, because no one was willing to actually see me as a person. They saw me as my behavior. And it wasn't even like I was acting out. I was just crying most of the time, but for some reason they didn't like that. I ran into a lot of old school type of teachers and doctors where they thought I should just, toughen up, and that's not me. I pride myself as an adult on being authentic to my feelings, and especially with regards to mental health. I don't want to hide anything. I don't want to be pressured by society to be someone I'm not just because I struggle with my mental health. So that was very true back then too. I'm very authentic, and I would show my feelings, and a lot of them wouldn't take the time to, again, see me as a human. It wouldn't. The compassion I encountered was very lacking. So I retreated back into my house. I dropped out of school in the 5th grade. No supports, no services, no IEP, and I couldn't function. That was a big thing too. Is OCD? My rituals were a full-time job. Every waking hour I was on doing a ritual, and then if I didn't do that, I would become very depressed and very anxious. A lot of intrusive thoughts that were really gruesome and dramatic to think at that age. And I was also very much sedated on medicine because the doctors didn't know how to help me, so they would sedate me. So I was completely non-functional. And that's another reason I decided to, stop trying. It's only making things worse. I'm just going to sit at home with the only person who understands me, and that's my mom.
What were your days like then? Were you doing homeschooling or?
I don't want to call it homeschooling because my mom really, it's not like my mom taught me. She would just pick up school from work. I'd complete the assignments best I could, and she'd take them back to get graded. And I've always been a great student. I've never gotten anything less than an A. So I could do my schoolwork really in probably an hour. But sometimes I couldn't do it because I was sleeping about 18 hours a day. And if my OCD was really bad, one day I couldn't even read. Just everything would shut down. And so I would sleep the whole day. So I just got by as best I could. Luckily, I was very just naturally skilled in, the subjects at school. So it wasn't that hard to just complete. If I fell behind, I could make it up easily in one day. So I did that. And, there were some times I did venture out into the outside world. When I was 13 and 14, I went to a specialty school. And I stayed there for 2 years. So I actually did, go to school. It took probably a year and a half for me to actually be comfortable in the school. And that school, was the first experience of trust I had outside of my family. They believed in me, and I soon came to believe in myself. But then again, once I left that school, I tried to mainstream back into public high school. And that was worse than any experience I had been through. So after those 2 years at the specialty school and then the fail year of trying to mainstream back into high school, again, that was at age 17. I just became a kind of a recluse again.
What was so bad about that high school, those 2 years?
I have, again, complicated. It would be a complicated answer, but the main thing is basketball back when I was young. When I was from the age of 7 to 17, I did leave my house to go outside in the front yard and play basketball for probably at least 2 hours a day if I wasn't too tired. That was my one escape from my mental demons and from all my worries. And so I always wanted to play professional basketball. And I was really good. I think if I went to a normal high school and I didn't struggle, I could have honed my skills more and definitely played college. But when I tried to mainstream at a high school, one of my teachers that we had several meetings with before I tried to mainstream, he was also the head basketball coach, and I did want to try out for the team. And he seemed really nice at first. We told him, my family, my parents, my teachers from the specialty school, they told him, who I was, how much I struggled. This is going to be my first experience in high school. And he seemed, very understanding. But then, long story short, he just, he played me like a fiddle for his amusement. He would stab me in the back whenever he could. Just, I don't know if it was just I don't really know. I try not to figure out the reasons behind other people's motives, but he cut me from the team, even though the IEP was that I at least be on the very junior team because I need that social interaction. And he agreed to that, but then he said no. He failed to tell me when the tryouts were, so I showed up to try out when the school was empty because he told me the wrong time for the tryouts. And therefore, I only had 1 day to try out, where all the other kids had 4 days to try out. And that 1 day to try out, he again put barriers in place that made it impossible for me to show my skills. So he cut me. He set me up to fail. And I remember going home with my parents, disgusted at humanity. I didn't pick up a basketball for about 5 years after that. And I just went home and I cried in the shower for about an hour. That was the first time I felt like my life ended. It feels like my life ends frequently, but that was very traumatic because the one steady constant in my life that brought me peace, basketball, I wanted nothing to do with it after that experience. And that all this is kind of detailed in my book. My newest book, On the Outside Looking In, is on Amazon. But yeah, long story short, that's again just for some reason not treated well at all by the outside world.
Yeah. Also, it's a coach. It's someone who is meant to be looked up to and to guide you.
Yeah, I know. And all the authority figures, all the people that I was supposed to trust in my life, teachers, doctors, coaches, I never encountered one that I could trust until that specialty school in the form of a teacher. And then when I was 18, I did play high school football. I didn't attend high school. I was able to take online classes, but I played high school football. And that coach, he didn't get me, but he treated me like a human. And that's all I ask from people. You don't have to understand my mind. I don't even understand my mind. It's too complex for anybody to understand. I just want you to treat me with some respect, with some dignity, with some decency. And for some reason, even to this day, that is so hard for people to do. I don't know why. But at least that high school coach, when I was 18, he showed me that. And I'll never forget that man, Coach Jason Ellen. I dedicated my first book to him. But he saved my life. He really did. He restored my faith in humanity. And whenever I lose faith, I kind of look back at him and say, there are some good people out there.
What was it like for you to play on the team? Because did you have friends until this point, or
I've never had friends. Like my last true friend. Like I say, I have a best friend now, but I only see her. Gosh, I've seen her once this year, and that's not because of the social isolation. It's just because it's hard for me to interact with people. My last true friend was around age 8. And then once I started struggling, I lost all contact with him. So I've never really had a true friend since age 8. During the high school football years, played 2 years on the team, and I didn't socialize. I was around all these peers for the first time in a long time. And again, I never really fit in with people in my age group, especially a bunch of, macho kids playing high school football. So I was one of the best players, even though, because my OCD, I've learned to manipulate my disabilities to become superpowers. My OCD, it makes me very tenacious and driven, and I don't stop until I get what I want, whether that's personal growth or something I set my sights on. So football, was a great outlet. I've always been working out. I've always pushed myself to the limit. So I was the hardest worker in the gym when we were doing conditioning drills, and then during games, I would not stop. I just had a tenacious drive to go hard. And so I earned a lot of respect from my teammates, even though I literally never said one word to them. I would always, when I was sitting on the sidelines, people would come up to me and try to initiate conversation with me. And I basically just say yes or no, or do whatever it took to make them go away. So yeah, I even being around those kids for 2 years, I really never talked to any one of them. But again, just due to my hard work and my work ethic, I was ultimately one of the most admired players on the team, and no one really knew how much I struggled before practice. I'd have a panic attack going to practice every day, and it was horrible. And a lot of my struggles are silent. A lot of people just see this interview, right? They don't see yesterday when I had a bad day and I was really struggling. So my interactions with society as a whole, in totality, throughout the whole of my life has been very unique and nuanced in that people see maybe 1% of me. But when I speak, when I might give my presentations, I think people see 100% of me. And that's why I love it so much. It's the one way I can really convey to the world who I am. And in turn, it brings audience together too, to trust one another more, because we only have each other.
Mm-hmm. When did you start public speaking?
At the age of 24, I decided, I remember lying on my bedroom floor crying at night, feeling totally lost. And I knew I had a lot to give to this world. I knew how smart I was, the insights I've gained, how much I had been through, how much I had overcome. I really just wanted to share my message. And so I thought, what the hell? Here I am, 24, living with my parents, crying on my bedroom floor at night when other kids are hanging out with their friends. I literally have nothing to lose. So again, my OCD, I was like, okay, I'm going to set my sights on being a public speaker. I don't know why I want to do public speaking, because I hate talking to anybody outside of my mom. But for some reason, I obsessed about it. And so I developed a bulletproof plan. I started arranging meetings with people. And for the first time, I felt passion ignite within me. For the first time since I stopped playing basketball, I felt that passion. So I gave my very first speech age 26. So this is only my third year. 2020 is only my third year doing it as a full-time career. It's taken off very rapidly. Most public speakers don't get paid for like the first 5 years, but I was lucky enough to just have a natural talent for it, where I can make a full-time career out of it. And it's funny, people who always see me speak, whether it's in an interview like this or on stage, or they see me posting about it on social media after my speeches, they think I'm a very social person. And I am, but only with one or two people in my life. I'm a totally different person when I speak like this about something that I really am vehemently passionate about, which is autism and mental health. I can't make small talk. The receptions before my speaking events, like the night before when they have receptions, I am I'm once again that guy in the corner with his drink in his hand, pretending to be busy on my phone when I'm just like, get me the heck out of here, right? Mm-hmm. But then the next day, I'm on stage and people come up to me afterward and they're like, you were that quiet, shy guy in the corner of the room last night, weren't you? I was like, yeah. I only connect with people. I grew up not having a lot of connections. And so I developed this way of connecting with people that's kind of backwards. Most people connect with others through small talk, and through that they become comfortable with this person, and they can open up to more deeper, vulnerable topics. Well, I connect with people from the get-go by discussing vulnerable topics. I want to talk about feelings. I want to talk about our greatest fears we have, our insecurities, and then I can become comfortable enough to initiate small talk with that person. So my way of connecting with people is actually kind of very much backwards than the average person.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if through opening up to people and showing vulnerability, then they in turn open up to you and it becomes mirrored.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest reward after my speeches, because I always do a book signing after my speeches. And I can't tell you how many times people have collapsed in my arms, crying, telling me about their child who is homeless, who has schizophrenia, and they don't know where he's been, and he struggles with his mental health, or just something about their own personal life. Because when I speak, I don't speak about me. I don't speak about autism. Yeah, I touch on those subjects, but I really generalize my message for everybody. It doesn't have, my audience is anybody. And so a lot of times teachers, when I give keynotes for like school districts, the teachers will come up to me and just say, they'll start crying, men and women, and say, I just really need to hear that because I've been struggling lately. So it's, there's some intense conversations during my book signings, because I really do open up that vulnerable dialogue and initiate that process of trust with the audience, to let them know that I'm going to bare my soul for you. And if you want to do the same afterward, I'm here for you, because I have a mutually beneficial relationship with my audience. They help me because it's very cathartic for me to bare my soul. And there have been times where I cry on stage, and that makes me just more passionate about speaking about what I speak about. So I always say, we're so fractured throughout this world these days, but if it's just one thing we all have in common, it's that we all know what it is to struggle. And my hope is through my speeches and through us realizing that we can use that struggle to actually create a bond between us all.
Mm-hmm. Then we can talk about the weather tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So let's go back to that first speech that you gave when you were 26, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like for you? Were you nervous? What were you scared of?
Yeah, it was an event really specifically arranged just for me. I made a contact about a year before that, and I told this woman my story, and she organized this event for me. And I was very, very nervous. I'd never given a public speech before, and I remember I had to get a shot of whiskey. I was so nervous, and then but I was excited too. I really wanted to share everything I'd been through, because not many people knew who I was. I felt like I was forgotten by society, and I wanted people to realize that there are a lot of people like me who are struggling that people don't know exist. They're at home. Nobody really knows who they are, and that was me. So I like to say now I'm a voice for the unheard, because I know how frustrating it is to not be recognized, especially when you're struggling. We need that validation when we struggle in order to process it. But the first speech, I took that shot of whiskey, and then I went on stage, and it was only like a 10-minute speech. And I read it, it wasn't like I just talked off the cuff. I read it, and, I'm always very hard on myself. So I was like, yeah, that was okay, I guess. But then people were like, oh, afterwards, they're like, so how long have you been speaking for? Do you do this for a living? And I was like, this was my very first time. And so apparently, again, like I had a natural gift for it. So it went very well. And then there was a specific person in the audience who recruited me to be on the Governor's Council for Disabilities. So, and then just kind of took off from there. I gave my first, that wasn't a paid speech, but I gave my first paid speech about 6 months later in Connecticut. So yeah, 6 months after that, I was flying across the country for a speech.
Mm-hmm. What have you learned about yourself from public speaking?
That's a great question. I guess because I guess I've learned from this whole experience of being part of society now for about 3 years is how strong I really am in terms of my fortitude, my tenacity, my perseverance, my resiliency. The last 3 years have been the best of my life, but they've also been the toughest. Again, people don't see me struggle at the airports. They don't see me having a somatic seizure the night before my speech. They don't see me get extremely depressed when I'm in a new city and I know nobody and I really don't have anyone to text except my mom. They don't see me having that meltdown a half hour before my speech where I'm on the floor crying on the phone with my mom saying, I can't do this. Why do I do this when it is such a toll on my well-being? So the last 3 years have honestly killed me. The stress is just ridiculous. And there are oftentimes I want to give up. But then I give my speech and I realize it's all worth it. And it makes me emotional now because, I've been struggling lately and I haven't had the ability to speak because of COVID. And so when you ask me what has public speaking taught me, it's taught me that one, I'm unstoppable. I always say to everybody, the toughest times are reserved for the toughest people. Life is a test for everybody. So we want to keep taking that test and eventually get that A plus. And every trivial challenge we come across is just practice for that ultimate test. And so I really run towards my struggles. And so public speaking has taught me that the more I struggle, the more I grow as a person. Strife, struggle, challenges, if you accept them, if you embrace them, they ultimately help you flourish into becoming the best person you can be professionally and personally. And then secondly, with regards to what public speaking has taught me is my connection I foster with my audience or with just really anybody. I never knew that and I wouldn't have known until people started telling me that I fostered this connection or this energy I have to really tear down a lot of walls and barriers for people to talk about things they don't normally talk about. And that has carried over into my personal life as well. For some reason lately, there have been like strangers coming up to me, kind of just like bearing their soul to me without knowing who I am. But I will listen because I know what it's like to not be heard. And so I want everybody to be heard. So I guess overall, what public speaking has taught me is that, I was right to follow my heart. I have a lot to offer. And if I followed my heart every single day of my life. And if I just keep doing that, I won't have any regrets. And my personal growth and development will continue to unfold before my eyes.
What do you want people to take away from your presentations when they hear you speak?
I want people to realize that life is about human connection, first and foremost. After that, it's the experiences we have and the memories we make. But firstly, it's the relationships we develop with people. And I want people to realize that we're all part of society. I realized when I was out of society, when I was a societal recluse, I had no obligations. I just did what I wanted to inside my house. But now that I'm in society, I realize that a lot of people take it for granted. When we're in society, there are moral tenets, there are societal obligations that we have to fulfill. It's not like we can just be part of society and expect things to be given to us. We, in turn, have to promote compassion to one another, look out for our fellow citizen. That's the core basis of a society. And people forget that. And so I want them to realize that, one, being in a society means you have to take it upon yourself to look out for others, even if you don't know that person. If you see someone struggling at the grocery store, you have to help that person out. It's your societal obligation. You can't just be part of society for everything it gives you and not give anything back. Our life's priorities, no matter where we live these days, seems to be totally backwards. We focus on societal status, we focus on money, we focus on getting into a relationship so we feel better about ourselves, and so we look good to our friends and colleagues. We focus on getting that promotion, we focus on that new house, that new car. That's not what life is about. And that's why so many people struggle behind the scenes. You can accrue whatever you want in life, but you're going to grow accustomed to it, and you'll ultimately not be happy if you weren't happy to begin with. Secondly, I want them to realize, again, what life is about. It's not about jobs. It's not about money. Sure, yeah, everything, you have to be pragmatic, right? You have to get through this life and you have to make money. But at the same time, we have to focus on what it all means. I always kind of go back to the deathbed perspective. And when we're on our deathbeds, are we really going to be worried about that promotion we didn't get? Are we going to be worried that we didn't make enough money? No. Again, we're going to be worried about what kind of connections we made, if we followed our heart, and what kind of experiences we have. And so people can use that, maybe that preconceived hindsight that they would have on their deathbed to generate foresight into the lives they lead now. I think would be very beneficial for us all to become a more compassionate people, a more equal people, and a more inclusive people. We need to realize that we're all in this together. And again, we have to look out for one another. Because to this day, when I struggle in public, people see this grown man and they either pretend I'm invisible or they think I'm crazy. And I don't know which one is worse. So every time that happens, I get discouraged. But then that in turn just ignites my fire more to spread awareness and a message of compassion and unity.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So you're spreading awareness not only about autism, but also about mental health. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so mental health is my biggest passion in life. When you're diagnosed with autism, you typically are at a much higher risk of having a mental health diagnosis as well. And so for me, I think I have 8. I lose count sometimes, but I also have bipolar, PTSD from a lot of traumatic events, depression, OCD, anxiety. I have panic disorder, which results in somatic seizures, which are terrifying episodes. And then I had a battle with anorexia a few years back, which still inhibits me to this day. So I have a lot of mental health diagnoses, and they're all invisible, and autism is invisible. And so I'm very passionate about invisible disabilities. When I'm at the grocery store, when I'm at that, reception before my speech, people don't see anything of what I struggle with. And there's not a second that goes by that I don't struggle. Struggle is just my life. It's normal for me now. I'm used to it. But again, I'm only at peace of mind when I'm on stage speaking. So I'm passionate about mental health because there's still such a huge stigma about it. And I know how cathartic and healing it is to be able to talk about it to people and not care what others think. If I go up to a stranger and, tell them what the diagnosis I have, they might think I'm crazy, but I don't care. The best people in life are crazy. I call myself crazy. I call myself psychotic, and I see nothing wrong with that. I love me. And if, people want to deem a person's value based on societal labels, they can do that, but that doesn't matter because the only opinion about me that matters is me. And I want that to be true for everybody, whether they have schizophrenia, whether they have borderline personality disorder, whether they have autism and are just diagnosed with severe depression. I want them to be proud of themselves. And, like Dr. Seuss said, if you don't fit in, you're born to stand out. And I want just people to be aware that what they do not see is always more important than what they do see. You don't see anything about me. What you do see is this normal looking guy in his 20s who, that's basically what you see, but you don't see what my life is actually about. You don't see everything I stand for. So what I talk about mental health in order to, 1, erase the stigma and stereotypes, 2, increase awareness about it, and 3, to alter the perspective of society, perspective with regards to everything, because we can never know what anybody else goes through in life aside from our own experience. And if we alter our perspective and our perception, if we can take that minute to actually, even hang upside down to alter our visual perspective, that will generalize over into developing neuroplasticity within the mind, within the brain, to alter our perspective on what it means to be human. There is no definition of a human experience. And if we can keep that open mind and realize that our perspectives are only ours, and they're no more right or wrong than anybody else's perspective on what it means to be human, then we're all the same, whether we have schizophrenia, whether we're poor, whether we're white, whether we're black, we're all the same, because we never know anything other than our own personal experience. And to be aware of your ignorance is the key to accepting that and learning and becoming more knowledgeable. We're all ignorant, right? But to be unaware of your ignorance leads to arrogance. I want everybody to be aware of their ignorance, because then they can be open-minded and open to learning more things.
As you were talking and describing the different diagnoses that you have,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what you think about people who have these labels and how society sometimes might excuse certain behaviors because that person has that label. And if everything is this spectrum, in a way, it's hard to find that line just because it's in the diagnostic criteria
Yeah.
manual that, okay, now that you have depression, we're going to allow you to feel these things and without judgment because you have this label. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's incredibly complicated and nuanced. There are times where, diagnoses and labels do lead to ableism and uh, a lack of, I mean, we talk about equality, right? But it really comes down to equity, because you can't really achieve equality without equity. And that's giving the people the right amount of resources to become equal amongst each other. And so there have been times, where I see, I go to like a developmental center for children, right? And some of the staff with some of the kids, they'll encourage the kids to be proud of themselves, but then the kids become too proud and they come across as very arrogant. And people will think that's cute if you have a disability, a severe disability. They'll think, wow, like that person is really proud of themselves. But if that was anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
without a disability, or if I acted like that, if I was walking around like, hey, I'm really cool, and I kept saying that, they wouldn't think it's cute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying we need to keep everything again in perspective. Take a step back and realize, wow, we're actually labeling them more by pigeonholing them by saying you're only allowed to display that overt confidence, but nobody else is. That's making them not more inclusive. That's making them more different, because they're the only ones who can display that confidence without judgment. So it can be very, again, complicated. I just want us all to we make up for so much of our insecurities through the way we act, right? And that's, again, one thing why I initiate vulnerable dialogue, is if we can just get our insecurities out there and just tell people, about our insecurities, then I think a lot of things would even out. We wouldn't have different labels. We wouldn't have different judgments about labels. I mean, if you're insecure that you have autism, say it, because there's no greater strength than being confident in your weaknesses. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I always say. So, I'm very insecure when it comes to dating women my age. I actually feel more comfortable dating older women because I'm more mature. I have no problem. I'm an open book. I realize it's uncomfortable for people to say that. It used to be uncomfortable for me to say things like I just said. Well, once you can say it, it's extremely liberating, and you become addicted to being an open book. And I don't want to fill any holes I have within myself by acting in a way, by compensating in other aspects of my life. I just want to be real. I want to be authentic. And, to this day, society expects us all to be perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I don't want to pretend to be perfect. I'm a broken soul. I'm a tortured soul, I believe. I struggle every day, and I go to some dark places. But at least I'm authentic, and I love that, because I think that's everybody's wish. I really do. I think everybody, wishes they could, but they kind of box themselves into a corner because they're now in a place where maybe they're married for 10 years and they feel like they've never shown their true selves, and it's too late to do it now. Or maybe they're in a job where it's too late to do it now, right? So if
Yeah,
we
or
can just from the
maybe,
get-go be
yeah,
real.
I completely agree. It is hard though. people care about how they look, not just physically, but how they appear to other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah, and it's, I think it takes a lot of work to get outside of those boxes if that's what
Mm-hmm.
all you knew as you
Yeah.
were growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And that's very much true. And I'm not expecting, and it's not like, I don't judge, one of those random encounters, well, I won't get into it, but I just won't, I don't judge people. I just don't, because again, I don't know what it's like to live their life. I will never know. So yeah, I'm not saying that people who, do compensate, which we all do, I compensate. Let's be more aware of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I don't think about how I look before I give a speech. I want to look my best, right?
Right.
Yeah, we all want to look good. We all want to project confidence and everything. But at the same time, we don't want to do that mindlessly. We want to be mindful of how and in what areas we're projecting ourselves in order to reflect on our insecurities. And it doesn't have to be overt to society. You can do it in your personal life without telling anybody. Just when you go to bed at night, think about what you did at work or at home and maybe why you did that. And does that reflect maybe an insecurity within you? It doesn't have to be, again, like the way I do it, talking to people I don't know about my insecurities. You can just reflect on them yourselves. And again, it all comes down to awareness, being aware of everything you are and everything you're not, and maybe everything you want to be, because awareness is the key to learning. It's the key to everything in life. Again, we're all ignorant, but let's be aware of that, and let's be aware of everything else in life too. We don't have to preach about it from the mountaintops, but the only way to truly know ourselves is to be aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. What are some ways you feel misunderstood?
Man, I could talk about that for days. I guess I feel completely misunderstood. I feel like there's only one person um, in this world who completely understands me. Uh, and no, it's not my mom. I Again, I'm misunderstood from the get-go just because all my disabilities are invisible, right? So when I'm struggling a lot, uh, I shut down and I can get this look on my face. So I've been told that looks very mean and apathetic. Uh, that's because I'm waging a war on the inside, right? Um, and I kind of get this determined look on my face, and I might come across as mean. And if I'm in public, whether it's at a council meeting or anything like that, people think I'm very standoffish, so they don't approach me. Little do they know I'm in the middle of a war inside my head. So if they did come up to me, that would actually bring me out of that war and distract me, and I could talk to them. So that's one way I'm misunderstood. It's just, again, my facial, how I look, whether it's regard to not seeing a disability or how my face looks at times when I'm struggling. Um, Everything that goes on in my mind, people just take that and take it at literally face value. But again, what you do not see is more important than what you do see. Another way I'm misunderstood is now that I'm, part of society, people think a lot of people on the internet, even though I could try to keep it as real as possible with my struggles, they see me, traveling everywhere, going to these literally different countries. I've spoken in 2 different countries as well. And they think I'm living this great life where I get to see all these places, fly for free, get paid to share my story. And they think I'm very social because they see posts with me on stage and posing for pictures with people on my book signing. And again, I'm not. I go back to my hotel and I'm all alone. I don't see the cities I'm in because they're scary for me. And so I give my speech, I do my thing, and then I go back to my hotel and pretty much cry, at least either before or after my speech, because especially after my speeches, I get that high of what it's like to have that human connection that I've been craving for the majority of my life, but then to realize that it's gone. And it's all my human connections are not steady. They're at speaking engagements where I have them, then that's it. It's not like I can go back to that speech tomorrow and have that same thing. I don't have a 9-to-5 job where I can get that social interaction every day. So I'm a very, very much I'm very lonely a lot of the times. I'm not very social. It's hard for me to connect with people in my personal life because, again, like I said, I'm backwards when it comes to developing connections with people. So I connect with people through my speeches, but in my personal life, it's incredibly hard to connect with people. And so people think I live this great life, where in reality, if people could get a peek inside my mind, I wouldn't wish my mind on anybody unless they're prepared to handle it. So is this life fun? I'm not going to say yes or no. Who's to say? But the definition of fun is it worth it? Hell yeah. It's only worth it because I can help others. I think about every week, Rachel. Again, people think I have this great career, and I do. I'm blessed. I'm lucky. But there's not one week that goes by where I don't think about just running away to Europe or to somewhere in the woods and having a cabin and just chilling out and just because society expects so much from me. And a lot of that I put on myself. But people, again, they look at me and they think they see a competent man and they don't know what's going on inside my head. And the burden of having to meet people's expectations when they don't know how much I struggle every day is very tough. So that's, like I said, I could answer this question for days on end, but those are a few areas that I'm misunderstood.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you opening up about it.
Absolutely.
So, Russell, you've written 2 books now.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was published in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the second one was last year. Could you tell us about the 2 books?
Yeah, so the first book is called Inside Out, Stories and Poems from an Autistic Mind. And that book I published when I was really still a societal recluse. And I self-published that book because I never, again, really had friends from the age of 8 onward. And so I soon realized that I needed an outlet. I wasn't playing basketball anymore because of that experience at the high school. And I came upon poetry as an outlet. It became my best friend because it didn't judge me, right? And to be able to write down my feelings and create an art form out of my daily struggles was very cathartic. So I had a lot of poems lying around. I thought, man, like nobody knows, except for my parents, nobody knows how much I struggle. And again, I wanted to let the world know I existed. So I self-published that book. Selfishly, I say, I just wanted it out there so people realize how much I was struggling. I wasn't expecting it to help so many people when they heard about it and they read it. And it's a short book. It just kind of gave an insight into my life because there is a little autobiography along with the poems. And so I can't tell you like how much it took me by surprise that people were emailing me saying, thank you so much. I can now understand what my son goes through or this or that. Or, I've had similar challenges and I love the way you put it in your poetry. That was my first taste of advocacy. And that actually, I guess, probably was a factor in my decision to try public speaking is because I knew already that my story could help people and I wanted to reach a wider audience. And so that was my first book. And then my second book just came out, last year. And that's kind of a sequel, an expansion on the first book. It's about 500 pages. And the first book was Inside Out. The second book is On the Outside Looking In. Because now I've always felt like I'm inside out, hence the title of the first book. And then the second book, now that I'm part of society, I still feel left out in my personal life because I'm very lost when it comes to my personal life. So I call it On the Outside Looking In because I feel like a lot of the times there's like a party on the inside of a house and I'm on the outside looking in through the window, wishing I could be a part of that. And I'm not. I'm out here in the rain when everybody's having a good time in there. So that's why I called it On the Outside Looking In, my life on the autism spectrum. And again, it's about 500 pages, an expanded autobiography, about 90 poems, very intense poems, and then some insight scan and lessons learned as well.
Would you be willing to share one of your poems with us today?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I will actually do a spoken word poem, and I think it's in my book. It might not be. I think I actually wrote this right after the book came out. But this poem is about growing up in school, being just treated poorly, and it's titled "What Does It Feel Like to Not Be Heard?" A penny for my thoughts? I'm the one who has to pay the cent. A cold ear was what I bought. Now all my pennies have been spent. I have so much to say, but no one will hear. I'm regarded as a reflection of Dracula in the mirror. I'm not there, so I just disappear into my mind, or at least my thoughts are sincere. What does it feel like to not be heard? It cuts deeper than the slur of any derogatory word. To be observed yet deferred only exacerbates the hurt. I deserve to be heard. Now I'm starting to sound absurd. I'm told that I'm lazy, that I want no part of school, that I'm acting a fool. This drives me crazy. All I need is some help, a friendly outreach of a hand. But the only hand I was dealt was that no teacher gave a damn. That's a poem.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I do a lot of spoken word poetry in my speeches, intertwined throughout this presentations, and again, that's cathartic in its own ways to be able to kind of, again, like when I was just reciting that poem, I was taken back to my school days and to revisit past experiences through an art form, through a different lens, through filter, again, alters my perspective on what I've been through and how I can progress looking back on that with a different perspective each time I recite a poem. So I really like spoken word poetry. There's some, I have one, they're probably maybe the most popular things about my presentations, aside from the message I spread, because again, they just, to be able to get insight into something that you're not too familiar with, and have it rhyme. There's something about hearing that auditory just way of processing things. It really, again, that's why I like poetry so much, because I can write down my feelings, I can read them to myself, I can just read them to myself, or literally speak them out loud, and using my different senses to process emotions, it helps tremendously in just really encompassing the totality of what I've been through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as a listener, I could feel that connection to you as you were speaking. The rhythm, you know, it's like I'm going on the journey with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the words that you choose, like, creates a lot of imagery.
Mm-hmm. That's my goal, is to, another goal of mine is through my presentations and poetry is to take, I feel like I have to enter other people's world all the time, and it's exhausting. So if I can take my audience into my world, again, that'll alter their perspective and gain more awareness.
What do you want people to take away from that poem?
From that poem, to realize how that occurrence of what I just said about not being heard in school and how poorly I was treated, that is still happening today. So whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're somebody in the corporate world, just realize the struggle that's out there. A lot of pain is silent, a lot of pain you don't hear about. But that very kid that I used to be, there's a kid like that right now. There's millions of kids like that right now. And again, we have to realize that the complexities of the human struggle to just get by. And again, so I want them to realize, I want them to be aware of struggle, of the need for compassion, especially for people you don't know, because you never know what kind of day someone just had. So just be a compassionate person, even on your worst days. You know, on my worst days, if I ask for so much compassion from others, I still have to be compassionate. I can't have a bad day and take it out on somebody else. So even on my worst days, I'll try to, if I go to the grocery store, and I'm in the car, I'll try to wave to like a pedestrian or something, just because I have to, I have to practice what I preach, right?
It's all about that human connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to go back a little bit to what you said about feeling like you're observing a party from the outside
Mhm.
looking in. Could you walk us through what goes on for you internally during social interactions?
Yeah, when I'm in my personal life, I I get in. I guess when I'm in a social setting, if I'm feeling good enough to actually have a somewhat of a decent conversation with somebody, I really become, I guess, infatuated, because I'm still lacking that very much in my life. Like I went to a New Year's party for the first time in my life this past New Year's, and I've never done that before. And I actually had some decent, deep conversations with people. Um, but then I cling to that, and because it's like I've been starved my whole life, and here's a big plate of food, and I want it. So in my head, what goes through my mind during those social interactions is one, I really have realized, again, through self reflection, my need to be seen as a good person. So I really try to, and I don't want that to be, right. That's something I can work on, because I don't need to be seen as a good person. I guess I subconsciously need that validation because I haven't had a lot of social validation in my life. So I subconsciously try to make up for it in my conversation. So there's a lot of I guess what goes through my mind is a lot of uh, insecurities, again, due to my lack of social experience, that I reflect on later and be like, that's why, that's why, even though I didn't like that person because he seemed kind of judgmental, I still wanted him to like me because I want to feel accepted by society for once in my life. So a lot of insecurities go through my mind, and I always, am very uh, self-conscious about, how I sit, how I'm appearing to others. Again, just because I'm not at all in my natural element. So I guess, yeah, short answer, a lot of insecurities, a lot of questioning myself, a lot of, dang it, why didn't I say this thing? Or I could have said this, or did I speak too long? Is this answer too long right now? But, then in my professional career, after my speeches, when I have a conversation, I have no insecurities at all because it's my natural element. So it's all about, kind of bringing the two together and getting that good balance.
Mm-hmm. Well, Russell, it's been so interesting talking to you today. I would like to end with one last question, though.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting hearing your side from that social interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So, what advice would you give to, I guess, neurotypical individuals who want to know how they can interact better with someone with autism or other mental disorders? What are some things they should consider?
I would say the number one thing is to shut up and listen. One of my favorite philosophers, he said God gave us 2 ears and 1 tongue because we were meant to listen twice as much as we speak. A lot of the times, when I confide in somebody, they want to fix it, or they want to ask more questions, when all I really need is just to let it out. Just to make make it known to the person that you're interacting with that, hey, um, anything that you want to talk about, I'm a good listener. Again, it's the simple things that I ask for. And again, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I can only speak for me. I can't speak for the autism community. I can speak in general terms, but I don't want people to think that, everyone's like me or I'm like everyone else on the spectrum. But for me, it's just the little things, if you're going to interact with me and you don't know me, you know, asking, not deep questions, but worthy questions. I don't want to talk about the game I saw last night. Okay, I want to talk about, ask me something I'm passionate about, right? A lot of people on the spectrum are very passionate about a few things, and they love talking about it. So to be able to create that bond, enter their world. That's what I'll say to keep it short. Is if you don't know somebody, and maybe they struggle with their mental health or with autism, just enter their world. And you can choose to enter their world any way you see fit, but it's refreshing and very much appreciated when someone enters my world on their own without me having to even ask. And those people that do, greatest gift I can ever receive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate your honesty and authenticity. Thank you so much for your willingness to open up and share your stories. And
yeah, it's been great sharing it with you, Rachel. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and you speak in a way that invites others to relate to you, even if they're not on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So, your work that you're doing is so inspirational, and you're touching so many people along the way. It's like you've created an opportunity for yourself out of your struggles. And you've come a long way. I mean, from not leaving the house for 10 years to now traveling all over the world to spread your message.
Yeah, it's just even hearing you say that, it's surreal how far I've come. And I have a lot of mantras about my life, and I do say I found my success through my struggles. If it wasn't for all these struggles, I wouldn't have found my success. And that's one message I really want parents of young kids to know, and young kids themselves, is life may not get easier, it might actually get harder, but if you embrace your struggles and you look inward, it will get better. Life will get better. Again, the toughest times are reserved for the toughest people. And if we can all embrace our struggles a little bit more, we'll come to realize that success is always lie behind those struggles.
Mm-hmm. And for our listeners who want to learn more about Russell Lehmann, you can visit his website, theautisticpoet.com.
Yep.
And they can pick up your books on Amazon, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I'll make sure to post all of these links on our show notes.
Yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, and there are, on my website, I have all the links as well. So that's cool. Yeah.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Russell.
Yeah,
Thanks
likewise,
again.
Rachel. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks for tuning in to Autism Knows No Borders. I hope you found inspiration in listening to Russell's message. I appreciate his outlook on life, focusing on human connection and promoting compassion towards strangers. Russell has managed to deal with his struggles without receiving any professional support, and has even used them to create amazing work. However, this is his story alone, and I would not like for it to deter anyone from seeking help when they need it. As a behavior analyst, I've witnessed the positive effects that therapy can have on people, and I encourage families to search for evidence-based services if necessary. Russell's story brings to light the importance of empathizing more with people, since we never really know who might be going through a tough time. In his spoken word poem, Russell reflects on an experience with a teacher who didn't realize his pain. This may have contributed to him growing up distrusting adults, among them his occupational therapist. How can we, as humans, be more aware of those around us who might be suffering in silence? You've been watching Autism Knows No Borders. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think in the comment section. Click here to watch another interview from our podcast. You can also find us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in each week for engaging conversations of how people across the globe are inspiring change and building community. Thanks for watching. Take care.